French President Macron unveils his new cabinet, hoping to change public opinion 2 years ahead of possible re-election. We'll be looking at the challenges that lie ahead for the new French government, particularly in terms of the economy that has been badly battered by the global pandemic. And in other news, as the first anti-Beijing demonstrators are charged under the new national security law in Hong Kong, China warns former colonial power Britain not to interfere. For those of you just joining us, welcome to the France 24 newsroom in Paris. I'm Alexander Orcott. Now we begin here in France, where days after voters gave President Macron's party a thumping in local elections, he's put the final touches to his cabinet reshuffle. It will see the creation of 3 beefed-up ministries to lead the nation's recovery from the coronavirus, as Emmanuel Macron tried to change public opinion 2 years before a possible re-election bid. Lauren Berstecker takes a look now at the new cabinet.
Mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir.
A highly anticipated government shake-up that left several positions untouched. Among those staying, the foreign affairs, education, economy, health, and defense ministers were all trusted to keep on with their jobs. Yet there were also a few surprises. Chief among those, Éric Dupond-Moretti, a criminal defense lawyer known for his critical views of the French justice system, is succeeding Nicole Belloubet at the helm of the Justice Ministry. It will be his first time holding a position in government. Another unexpected nomination, Roselyne Bachelot, who will replace Franck Riester as Culture Minister. A former member of Jacques Chirac and Nicolas Sarkozy's governments, Bachelot quit politics in 2012 and has since appeared on numerous television and radio shows. Meanwhile, Public Accounts Minister Gérald Darmanin, often described as the rising star of the Macron government, will be taking over from the unpopular Christophe Castaner as Interior Minister. And finally, Barbara Pompili, a former member of the Green Party, was named Minister of Environmental Transition. It was one of the most anticipated nominations, following the Green Party's record showing in last month's municipal elections.
All of those people will have to hit the ground running, particularly when it comes to the economy. Like much of the world, many people have lost their jobs here in France, while whole industries have been left struggling. So what exactly are the particular challenges? Luc Schrago takes a closer look.
The toll the coronavirus pandemic has taken on France's economy is huge. Over 13 million workers were on state-paid leave at the height of the country's lockdown, and job cuts are expected to reach as high as 1 million by the end of the year. That could push unemployment back over 10% from 7.6 at the beginning of the year, wiping out President Emmanuel Macron's gains in bringing it down to its lowest level since 2008. In 2020, France's economy is now due to shrink by around 11%, its worst drop since World War II. And that's with Macron's emergency stimulus measures worth 460 billion euros, leaving public debt set to rise to 121%. Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire is already counting on future growth to offset that, and says those emergency measures will be retained as long as they're needed. However, he may need to find more finance in the short term, with stalled health reforms that were meant to see salary rises worth 7 billion euros go to healthcare workers. Unions say it's not enough, with 6.4 billion going to non-medical staff and the rest for doctors. Macron's deeply unpopular pension reforms may also be gone for now, but they're not forgotten. The pandemic's effects has left France's pension deficit now set to reach 30 billion this year. One potential bright spot, though, in terms of job creation. The Greens' recent victories in local elections have left environmental policies being taken much more seriously, and that leaves the way open for a green-tinged stimulus plan, with climate-oriented politics at its heart.
Moving on now to China, which has accused the UK of gross interference in its internal affairs after Boris Johnson's government offered a path to British citizenship for some 3 million people from the territory. British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab has rejected the accusation that comes a week after Beijing imposed a sweeping new national security law that critics say erodes Hong Kong's freedoms as a semi-autonomous region. The first demonstrators have now been charged under the new law.
In the grey vehicle, A 23-year-old man is being brought before a Hong Kong court. He's the first demonstrator charged under the city's new security law. Charged with terrorism and separatism, his bail was to be refused. At the same time, local democracy activist Joshua Wong was up before a judge too for his role in last year's protests. A book he'd authored was also being pulled off shelves along with others to check they complied with the new party line, as the Hong Kong government ordered schools to remove literature that breached the law. Wong called on the international community to show its solidarity.
The national security law is not only targeting a small group of people, it's affecting the daily life of Hong Kongers and even enhance and encourage or facilitate more censorship with the risk of our personal safety. With the threat of life sentencing, we might be worried and also being targeted by Beijing.
His statement seems likely to have consequences, with protesters saying the new law essentially gives Beijing carte blanche to trample over long-cherished rights. They've been holding up blank signs to get around the measures they've named the White Terror.
我哋覺得呢一個嘅港版嘅國安法咧，實際上係一張白紙，但係佢嗰個嘅 interpretation 全部咧都由呢個中國共產黨去決定嘅。
Western nations have levelled criticism ever since Beijing brought the law into force last week, saying it overturns the one country, two systems deal in place since the UK handed Hong Kong back to China in 1997. The US, the UK and Canada have all announced sanctions against China, which in turn has accused them of meddling in its internal affairs.
Over to India, which has now overtaken Russia to report the third highest number of coronavirus infections in the world, at close to 700,000, behind only the United States and Brazil. It has, however, reported fewer than 20,000 fatalities from COVID-19, quite an achievement in a nation of some 1.3 billion people. Yenna Lee and James Facina take a look now at how India continues to battle the coronavirus.
One of the new 7 wonders of the world remains under lockdown. The Taj Mahal was set to reopen to the public, but authorities made a U-turn after the surge in COVID-19 cases. A disappointment for both tourists and tour guides.
मेरी बेटी का बहुत मन था कि मम्मी घूमने चलो, कब से घर में बैठे हुए हैं, तो हमने सोचा कि शायद आज जाएंगे तो ओपन हो गया होगा अब तो, लेकिन यहाँ आके हमें निराशा हाथ लगी।
बड़ी निराशा हुई ये जान के केंद्रीय मंत्रालय ने ताजमहल खोलने के निर्देश दिए, लेकिन आगरा जो कि अभी भी हॉटस्पॉट जहाँ पे कई सारे हैं कंटेनमेंट जोन्स हैं।
Agra has the most cases of COVID-19 in Uttar Pradesh, and numbers have been soaring across the country. With almost 700,000 cases now detected, the peak could still be several weeks away. Other big cities such as Mumbai and Delhi are struggling to contain the outbreak.
अवेयरनेस की ज़रूरत है, पब्लिक अगर अवेयर हो जाएगी, मैं समझता हूँ इस पर रोकथाम जरूर होएगी।
As a result, local lockdowns have been reimposed in parts of the country, while authorities carry out widespread testing in a bid to regain control and stop the virus from spreading. Earlier this week, India's aviation regulator extended the ban on international air travel to the 31st of July.
We're now going to take a brief look at some other stories making world headlines. In the United States, the mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, says she's tested positive for COVID-19, though she currently has no symptoms. The 50-year-old Democrat is considered a potential running mate for Joe Biden in November's presidential election. Meanwhile, the Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has told supporters he's undergone a lung scan and COVID-19 tests after showing symptoms of the illness, with the results expected on Tuesday. The right-wing former army officer has been heavily criticised for playing down the severity of the virus, which he's described as a little flu. He's resisted calls for lockdown, as confirmed cases pass 1.6 million for some 65,000 deaths. And more than a dozen nurses have been arrested in the Zimbabwean capital after taking to the streets to call for a pay rise. The demonstrators in Harare say they've been underpaid and underappreciated as the country continues to struggle with a surge in coronavirus cases. The nurses' union says Zimbabwe's economic crisis and inflation has seen their wages plummet from the equivalent of $800 in 2008 to about $35 today. Now, here in France, the world's most visited museum has reopened after shutting its doors for nearly 4 months. The Louvre is now accepting a limited number of visitors, about a quarter of its normal capacity, and face masks are compulsory. It will give the few visitors who do go in a unique opportunity to see the world's most famous smile without the normal throngs of foreign tourists blocking their view. Karis Garland explains.
She hasn't been without visitors for this long since World War II. On Monday, tourists were reunited with the Mona Lisa as the Louvre reopened after a 16-week closure. For many, the event was not to be missed.
We decided to come here because we felt that Corona is starting to calm down, and like the Louvre, it's really amazing here.
Face masks are compulsory, and as these tourists learnt the hard way, tickets must be booked in advance.
I tried, on the internet to book, some places, and everything was booked. I said, well, maybe we try, to go down there, but it doesn't work.
The museum is expecting up to 10,000 visitors per day, whereas up to 50,000 people toured the site before the pandemic. Other popular draws like the Venus de Milo and the vast antiquities collection will be accessible, but a third of the galleries where social distancing is more difficult will remain off limits.
Ça nous a permis, ces 45 000 mètres carrés, d'organiser un circuit de visite. On rentre dans les salles par une porte et on en sort par une autre. Donc voilà, l'idée c'est d'abord de dire aux gens, c'est un endroit sûr et vous pouvez revenir dans un musée aussi grand que le musée du Louvre.
The Louvre has lost an estimated 40 million euros following the closure. Most of its visitors used to come from overseas, led by travellers from the United States. But with Americans still barred from entering the European Union, the museum is hoping to attract visitors from closer to home.
Finally, tributes are pouring in following the death of Ennio Morricone, the Italian composer known for his atmospheric scores in spaghetti westerns like The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. Touted as one of the most versatile creators of music, Morricone wrote for some 500 films in almost all genres, from horror to comedy.
It's a tune instantly recognised. The theme for The Good, the Bad and the Ugly was just one of Ennio Morricone's legendary compositions. Morricone wrote for television programmes, popular songs, orchestras and over 400 films. Most notably the 1960s spaghetti westerns of Sergio Leone, with the fusion of music and sound effects accentuating dialogue-free tension.
Nel cinema sentivo che c'era una grande
I felt the immense possibilities that cinema offered at the time. All the possibilities to do well, to do even better. But there were composers who were quietly staying within the codes. I always tried to move beyond that.
Born in Rome in 1928, Morricone learned to play the trumpet from his father and went on to study composition at Rome's Conservatory. He first wrote for theatre, radio programmes and pop artists, but it was his film scores that brought him the most fame. What came to be known as the Dollars trilogy starring Clint Eastwood was a worldwide success. In 2007, he received an honorary Oscar for Lifetime Achievement, but he had to wait until 2016 to win his first Academy Award for one film in particular, Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight. Morricone died in hospital early Monday morning, aged 91. He'd been admitted last week after falling and fracturing his femur. He's remembered by his wife and 4 children.
Ennio Morricone, who's died at the age of 92. And on that note, we end this edition. I'll be back with more news updates in 15 minutes.